Every time a new NBA season begins, it offers a good amount of optimism for all 30 franchises. They enter the new year with hopes and goals that they're ready to go try to accomplish, but the harsh reality is that while some teams are built to exceed those expectations, others are not. Sometimes it can be clear to a lot of people that things need to change, but teams refuse to accept that fact until it's too late, and that brings us to today's video. Today we'll be discussing the 4 NBA teams that are most likely to blow things up and go in a new direction this season. These are the teams that all have talent and can compete, but if or when they start to fall short of expectations, they may look to sell off some of their best players and enter a rebuild. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I'd also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first team we'll be discussing today that very well could end up blowing things up is the Philadelphia 76ers. The 76ers were probably the most obvious inclusion on a list like this because their summer has been filled with nothing but drama and negativity. The relationship between James Harden and the organization soured quickly. It's been a back and forth battle between both sides trying to come out on top, and all of this dysfunction is only going to make things tougher in the future. Right now, we're waiting for another team to seriously engage the team in trade talks for James Harden, because the discussions between them and the Clippers fell through after the Clippers refused to even offer up someone like Terrence Mann for him. So now Harden is stuck in limbo, and his presence could lead to disaster. If he's still on the Sixers roster by the time the season starts, the question then becomes, will he play? If he does end up playing, we've all seen what an unhappy James Harden looks like out on the court, and if he's not giving it his all, he will actively be throwing games for the team. Then, on the flip side, if he's not going to be playing, then the team is obviously worse than they were last season, so all of it is a lose-lose for basically everybody involved. We've seen a similar situation happen when Ben Simmons was holding out for the Sixers a few seasons ago, and during that time, Joel Embiid was able to step up and keep the Sixers afloat in the standings without him, as they were in 3rd place in the East when Ben eventually got traded for James Harden. So I'm not saying they're not capable of staying afloat through all of this, but obviously if a few other teams do manage to pass them up, then there's a real chance that Joel Embiid may become unhappy and request a trade. Once Embiid requests a trade, that's the end of the road for the Sixers, and blowing it up is really the only option. If they make it through the season unscathed, then the team does have plans to spend a lot of money in free agency next summer, but that is a pretty big if. The next team we'll be discussing today that has a good chance of blowing things up this season is the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls, I truly believe, should have just taken the leap already this offseason, but instead they chose to double down on the group that they have for a chance at one last hurrah. 2 seasons ago they acquired Nikola Vucevic, they then followed that up by bringing in DeMar DeRozan that following offseason. They also brought in Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso, and with that group paired with Zach LaVine, they were planning on getting back into contention, but it didn't really work. They got swept in the first round of the playoffs 2 years ago, they didn't make it out of the play-in tournament this past season, and yet, after the offseason they just had, the mindset from the front office was clearly to run things back with the same group, expecting different results. Vucevic, Kobe White, and Ayo Dosunmu were given new contracts, and their biggest free agency signing was Torrey Craig, so I'm struggling to find ways to be optimistic. Their ceiling is extremely low, and even if they hit that ceiling, it's going to result in a first-round playoff exit. Being stuck in the middle of the table is the worst place you can be in the NBA, and the front office will wake up to that fact eventually. If another season of mixed results comes in, then I don't think it's crazy to think that guys like Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan will get antsy, and if they want out, then there's nothing to really hold on to at that point. DeRozan is also in the final year of his contract, so he especially could be moved at some point this season when things go awry, because worst case scenario would be to lose him for nothing next summer. The next team up with a pretty good chance of blowing things up this season is the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors are another example of a team that is just holding on too long with a false sense of hope. Ever since their 2019 NBA title, they've progressively gotten worse and worse with each passing year, and they have also sat back and watched as quite a few of their best players left them in free agency, leaving them with nothing in return. It started when Kawhi Leonard bolted for LA, then Kyle Lowry left for Miami, and then this summer Fred VanVleet bolted for Houston to chase the money. They're coming off of a season where they too didn't make it out of the play-in tournament. So even before VanVleet left, the team wasn't playoff caliber. Then when you dive deeper, you see that OG Anunoby, who is one of their best remaining players, has been begging to be traded or given a bigger role for a while now, and is clearly unhappy with the state of the Raptors. Anunoby is set to become a free agent next summer as well, so there's almost zero denying the fact that he will be the next on the list of Raptor players to leave them in free agency if they don't trade him first. Just like the Bulls, the Raptors are stuck in the limbo of mediocrity and are refusing to accept their fate. They're clutching at straws, holding on to false hope. This offseason, they brought in Dennis Schroeder, which clearly indicates that they're trying to replace VanVleet and stay afloat, but the move is an obvious downgrade. If the team gets off to a slow start, then the noise is going to pick back up about Anunoby wanting out. Pascal Siakam's future is still up in the air as well, as his contract expires after this season too, and at some point, the front office could cave and look to rebuild, starting with Scottie Barnes leading the way. And finally, the last team we'll be discussing today that has a decent chance of blowing things up this season is the Atlanta Hawks. If you haven't caught on to a pattern by now, the teams that typically shift towards a rebuild that I'm discussing in this video are the ones who made aggressive moves, had hopes of contending for titles, but took a big swing and a miss. The Hawks made a surprise run to the conference finals in 2021, which prompted them to start speeding things up to look to continue on at that level. They brought in DeJounte Murray to pair with Trae Young in the backcourt and hoped to continue developing the talent already present, but that playoff run proved to be lightning in the bottle because they immediately came back down to earth. They've been eliminated in the first round of the playoffs in each of the last 2 seasons, and in that time, they have been ominous reports regarding Trae Young's presence in the locker room. He hasn't been the easiest to play alongside for some of his teammates. The firing of Nate McMillan last season came at a time where he and Trae Young were butting heads, and where there's smoke, there's typically some sort of fire in these situations. It also just so happens that reports came out this week saying that the Lakers have been closely monitoring Trae Young and his situation in Atlanta, so you already know that they're waiting to go swoop in and get him if things in Atlanta go south. With this situation, and all 3 other situations that we discussed in today's video, I'm obviously not saying that these teams are a lock to take things in a new direction. I'm just saying that out of all of the teams in the NBA, these are the 4 with the most smoke pointing towards it. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below how you think the season will go down for these teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.